Welcome back to the Aim and Practice podcast, where I have the immense pleasure of sitting down with a diverse array of practitioners, experts, and authors. And together, we delve into their unique journeys and insights exploring this beautiful and multifaceted world of wellness. I'm your host, Jess Reynolds, and today you'll hear my conversation with Dr. Sharleen Lawrence. Now, Dr. Lawrence is a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine and a certified hypnotherapist, as well as the creator of Hypnopuncture method with a background in functional medicine and a true passion for holistic health. Now, Sharleen brings a unique blend of Eastern and Western approaches to her practice.
I bolted out of bed and I sat up and I think I startled my husband, woke him up, and I was like, oh my God, what if I did hypnotherapy with acupuncture?
Throughout our discussion, Sharleen shares how her innovative hypnopuncture method combines the power of acupuncture with hypnotherapy. We dive into the specifics of how this integrated approach can enhance healing on both physical, mental, and even spiritual levels. And this is a particularly important and fascinating conversation for me because I really have met very few practitioners who combine acupuncture and hypnotherapy.
Okay, we found this block to your healing, and now I have a tool that can allow you to get over it, get around it, brush through it, whatever it is.
Sharleen underscores the importance of addressing mental blocks in the healing process and how her unique approach helps patients overcome these obstacles. She offers insights into the intersection of traditional Chinese medicine, hypnotherapy, and NLP techniques.
Yeah. The biggest thing for success is mindset. And part of that is knowing what it is you want and what does success look like for you.
Sharleen is an amazing person, and our conversation was absolutely fascinating. And she offers her perspective on what it takes to thrive in the world of complementary medicine. She provides valuable insights on mindset, defining personal success, and truly serving patients. So with that, let's jump in. So before we get into today's episode, I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, Jane, their clinic management software and EMR. Now, the team at Jane understands that clocking out from the clinic, well, it doesn't always mean you're clocking out for the day. Instead, it's often the start of charting long into the evening. So with time-saving charting features like custom smart narratives, chart duplication, and dictation, Jane helps you finish charting your patient or clinic notes during work hours, not after hours. And to save you even more time, you have access to Jane's chart template library that's fully stocked with pre-made templates that have been very generously shared by practitioners in the community. You can even customize them further with charting tools like side-by-side photos, checkboxes, and even range scales. So to see how Jane can help you free up your evenings from admin tasks, click the link in the show notes and book a personalized demo. But if you're ready to get started, you can use the code AIM1MO at the time of sign-up for a 1-month grace period applied to your new account. Well, Sharleen, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation for many reasons. I mean, I look forward to most of my conversations, but this one's going to be particularly interesting for me because it's very, very rare I get to talk to another practitioner of hypnotherapy, and astronomically rare that I get to speak to one who also combines acupuncture and hypnotherapy. So I'm looking forward to wherever that discussion takes us. But on top of that, after reading a little bit about what you do and how you practice and just your journey into wellness, I think this will be a very fascinating conversation. So thank you again for joining me. And I would like to start in the same way that I usually do, which is tell me your journey, right? Like, how did you get into this wonderful world of traditional Chinese medicine?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. I'm really excited, and I have been looking forward to this for the same reason you have, that you and I practice similar modalities, and it's something that a lot of people don't seem to combine. And my journey is non-linear compared to a lot of other TCM docs out there. And I feel like most of the TCM docs I know, they got acupuncture and it changed their life physically, and so they decided to go into it themselves, or maybe they grew up with it, like they come from a family lineage. That was not my journey. I actually was on the road to be a musician, and I played in band all through like elementary, middle, high school, even through college. And I wanted to perform. I wanted to play with the Boston Pops. And I was told that I would never make any money as a musician. So they tried to steer
Hmm.
me into like music education, and that just, it wasn't for me. I can't listen to little kids on their screechy instruments and teach them. So I I kept coming back to this, like, you got to have a job that makes good money. Like, that's what people kept telling me. And so I thought of the richest person I knew at the time, who was my uncle, and he had a degree in accounting. So I changed to accounting. And I was terrible at it. I'm still terrible at it. My accountant laughs every time he hears this story because he's like, he's seen my books and he's like, I can't believe that you are trained in this. And I was just so unfulfilled in college pursuing an accounting degree, and I felt like that wasn't going to allow me to help people. Although, my accountant helps me. So, and I help people, so obviously there is that.
Hmm.
Um but I had 1 year left of college, and I just hated the accounting program, and I wasn't doing well. I was, honestly, my grades were miserable. And so I decided to, kind of think about, like, what is it that I want to do? And I've always loved the human body. I grew up reading my mom's Grey's Anatomy book on the kitchen floor while she cooked. And I thought there were two ways to help people with their health. I thought you could be an MD. And since I faint at the sight of blood, that was out. And the other thing I thought you could do was to be a massage therapist. So
Hmm.
I told my sister I was going to drop out of college. I was going to go to massage therapy school. And fortunately, she convinced me to finish my degree and said, an accounting degree might help you with a massage business. And I said, okay, you got a point. But she introduced me to her qigong teacher. My sister she's a flight attendant, and she had had many surgeries in childhood, and so she had an injury on the job where actually a passenger's bag fell out of the overhead bin and like hit her in the
Mm.
neck and herniated some discs.
Oh.
And the Western medicine solution was, two surgical interventions to get her the relief she needed. And she just was like, I just don't want to go through another surgery. She's had many. And so she found Qigong. And through Qigong, she was able to create space. The herniations resolved and she healed her body. And so she introduced me to her Qigong teacher, who was going to teach a Japanese style massage class. And he happens to be an acupuncturist. I'd never heard of it before. And he took an hour out of the first day of class to sit with me and my sister and just kind of explain a little bit about Chinese medicine. And he had a gecko, like gojia, the herb, the Chinese herb. He had it
Hmm.
like filleted on a stick, basically. It was like crucified on this little stick. And he brought it out and he's like, this is a Chinese herb. And I was so fascinated. So I enrolled in the class right away. I started the following day. And he just taught us like basic 5 element theory within the class. And just that clicked for me. It made so
Hmm.
much sense of how we look at the body as a whole. And from that day forward, I was like, I don't want to be a massage therapist. I took all of his trainings and am technically trained in massage, but I don't practice it. But from that day, I decided I want to study Chinese medicine. I want to be an acupuncturist. And it took a few years for me to kind of take the leap and move away. I had to move away from my hometown to go to school, and did. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And so I finished school out here in Southern California, got licensed, got married, all in the same year.
Hmm.
And here I am running my practice. And then several years into practice, I stumbled upon hypnotherapy and falling asleep one night, as you know, in the hypnotic state. That's the theta brainwave state that we naturally pass through as we go into sleep. I like bolted out of bed and just, I sat up and I think I startled my husband, woke him up, and I was like, oh my God, what if I did hypnotherapy with acupuncture? Like, we can heal our patients just on every single level. And so I enrolled in a hypnotherapy school. I got all my training, and as soon as I could safely get a patient in and out of hypnosis, I started asking my patients if they'd let me try it out, see what we could do.
Nice. That is cool. I love it. I love the stories. I always love the entry into medicine, the stories, because my experience within these podcasts and just talking to people is in our particular type of medicine, the complementary alternative medicine, it is so rarely a linear path. It's almost always like this circuitous, meandering route to the aha moment. So that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing. And I'm curious to kind of go into multiple different directions. But I would love to start with let's just dig in and talk about hypnotherapy. The listeners who have been listening for a while know that this is a big part of my practice. I'm really passionate about for a lot of reasons, but I'm really curious about your reasons. What is it about one, hypnotherapy that you really enjoy? And then I've got a follow-up question about the combination, but I'd really like to start with what is it about hypnotherapy that you find most useful clinically?
Ooh, I wasn't prepared for this question. Okay. Honestly, it's allowed me to be able to notice where my patients have blocks and then be able to present them, like kind of hold up a mirror and say, okay, do you see that you have this block to your healing? And when then they are aware of it, great. The awareness is a huge part of taking the first step. But then sometimes, like, what the heck do you do once you're aware with it or aware of it? So then I'm able to say, okay, we've found this block to your healing. And now I have a tool that can allow you to get over it, get around it, crush through it, whatever it is. And that's where I've found it just so clinically useful is, patients who have secondary gain, like they're ill and they want to get better, or they're unwell and they want to feel well, but they've been on disability for 20 years. And if they're better, then they have to go off of disability and get a job. And that's a secondary gain. And so being able to present them with that and let them come to the realization, and then we get to work around it. Maybe they do want to stay on disability forever, and that's okay. And if they realize that that's a secondary gain they have and decide that they want to get past it, then we have solutions.
Nice. I really appreciate that. And I'm curious, and it's okay if we get like super nerdy or nitty gritty or high level. I'm curious what type of hypnotherapy practice, like what's your general routine? Like, do you do the typical induction and deepener? Do you have like your own thing that you've developed over the years, say Erickson and all these things? So how do you practice it?
So I studied through a school called HMI, and so it was Dr. John Kappas who started the school. So it's Kappasenian Hypnotherapy. I do very little Ericksonian, only because I feel like he's just like over my head at this point. Like what I've learned of the Ericksonian style. I love the style. I love the metaphors, and I personally don't think I'm great at metaphors. I have a handful of like really solid ones that I use regularly. But just coming up with like metaphors all over the place, I'm not good at, I guess. I do a pretty standard induction. I like to use an eye fascination induction is my favorite. And I pick from a couple that I really love. And then I do a standard deepener, usually going down the stairs. And
Classic.
I like to do a full body relaxation with that, and then kind of dive into the therapeutics after that.
Nice. Yep, sounds pretty much identical to mine. I I tried to really like study Ericksonian for quite a while, and like I was just obsessed with trying to figure out these metaphors. But I think very similar to you, if a person's mind doesn't naturally work in metaphors, it's so challenging. So I definitely understand that Ericksonian is just it's brilliant, but it's special. Now I'm curious when you've got somebody on the table, right? And do you choose your points with the hypnotherapy session in mind, or do you kind of have like two separate treatments going on? It's like we're going to do the points for your diarrhea that you're dealing with, and then we're going to do hypnotherapy for this mental block we have for you getting off of disability or something like that, or are they kind of conjunction? How does that unfold for you?
That, oh, I've never thought in terms of this way. I just do my thing. So these are great
Oh,
questions.
nice.
Um, I would say, especially when I'm doing hypnopuncture with my patients, I call it hypnopuncture. Um, I like to, I kind of do an overall balancing treatment with the acupuncture. That way, we're kind of hitting up digestive system, hormone balance, emotional balance, that kind of stuff. And then I'll throw in a few points here and there on specific physical ailments they have maybe going on. Um, I have a very specialized treatment that I do with patients, which is really rooted in NLP called timeline therapy, where that I actually pick specific points after each emotion that we walk through to release that from that organ system. So like I'll pick, liver 6 to release any anger from the liver. And I pick the sheep left points of those organ systems basically. Um, and so that's the only one that I do completely in conjunction with a hypnopuncture treatment, is to release those emotional things.
That's super cool. Super cool. I never thought about that before. I really appreciate that direction, that insight. Awesome. Now I know that you do more than just acupuncture and hypnotherapy, and we'll likely meander our way back to that topic. But as I was looking into a few of the other things you do, from my understanding, you also practice or have practiced functional medicine, or perhaps integrating more than just TCM. If it's okay with you, I'd like to talk about that, because that's another thing that you and I share in common, that it's not just all TCM, it's kind of TCM and. So explain to me the journey beyond TCM. What kind of led you into doing some of the more functional medicine stuff, bringing in some of the Western sciencey stuff? How did that unfold?
Yeah, this is fun because I'm bringing it back full circle. So when I was in TCM school, I had the opportunity to work with a brilliant acupuncturist in Santa Monica, where I studied. And I got to do front desk work for her. And she practiced a lot of functional medicine. And I just got to see over the couple years that I got to work for her, um, hundreds and probably thousands of patients came through the door in those couple of years, and they were getting huge benefit. And she was so busy, she could only see a patient about one time every 3 weeks. So it wasn't this, I need to see you twice a week or 3 times a week or even once a week kind of treatments. And they were still getting immense benefit. And so I really started to pay attention to, like, what are the supplements that she uses? Like, what are the companies that she trusts? Where did she get her functional medicine education? And not that at starting out that I was in the spot where I could say, I only need to see you 3 weeks from now. But she had been able to develop her practice that way. And so when I first started working for her, I was really anti-Western anything. I was like, I'm going to be a classical TCM doc. I'm going to only like treat the Shen and everything.
Yeah.
And I learned through working with her that was just probably not practical for, our Western lifestyle. And so when I did go out into my own practice, I saw a strong need very early on to be able to communicate with my patients that we're talking about vitamin D and stuff like that. Like they understand that. They don't understand me talking about their liver qi stagnation and their spleen qi deficiency. Um, so I went ahead and did a lot of like continuing ed in the functional medicine space. I started doing my own research on some of these supplement companies on, who has really good quality products and they're sourcing their materials really well. And so it really did kind of help bridge that communication gap, I guess, with my patients. And it just turns out people were just coming in with their lab work and like slapping it on the table in front of me and saying, I just got this from my doctor and she talked to me for 3 minutes and I don't know what it means, but I Googled all of this stuff. I went to Dr. Google and it says I'm going to die tomorrow. So, it was kind of a trial by fire, like learn really fast how to communicate what's going on with my patients. And then trying to bridge that into, okay, if your liver enzymes are off, how is that affecting other processes in your body? How does that translate to what I'm doing with the TCM? And the funny part about it coming full circle now is, yes, I still practice a lot of functional medicine where I do like to look at lab work and kind of see what's going on with the patient. However, I'm really getting back to my TCM roots and I'm starting to move away from supplementation and towards the awesome Chinese herbs that we have. And to say, okay, I specialize in Hashimoto's. So I work with a lot of Hashimoto's patients and okay, well, great. I'm, used to working with your levothyroxine prescription and maybe putting you on selenium or something, but what Chinese herbs are going to support this kind of spleen qi deficiency presentation you have? Maybe a lot of these herbs naturally have a high amount of selenium, like Brazil nuts. And so like, what can we use kind of from that herbal perspective to move away from the pills towards the teas, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. And again, once again, our journeys are somewhat parallel. I personally found once I started introducing functional medicine, like when I finished school, I was totally pooped out with TCM lingo. So then me being classic me, I swung way too far one way and I'm like, that's it. I'm going way the other way. So I dove deep into the functional medicine realm. And what I ended up realizing is, this is a dramatic oversimplification, but I believe that functional medicine is basically the modern form of Chinese medicine. The baseline principles are almost identical, which is super cool, just different pathways of getting to the ultimate diagnosis and then different ways of treating, be it, supplements and diet or herbs and acupuncture and as well as dietary therapy. So they're super duper complementary, but they require two totally different and vast sets of knowledge. So for myself, I found that I couldn't hold both and be good at it. It's like I was pretty good at acupuncture, pretty good at functional medicine, but I wasn't great. It was just too much information to try and do it all. So I definitely get what you mean, kind of doing the full circle and coming back to the roots. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I would say that's a beautiful way to put exactly where I'm at now, where I've been pretty good as a TCM doc. I've been pretty good as a functional medicine doc. And now I want to be great. And to do that, I get to, hone in on one thing. And my scope is better. I have a bigger scope when it comes to TCM, and it's a beautiful medicine. And so just I'm really finally at this point in my career, 9 years into practicing, like starting to actually look at the real roots of our medicine and not just what I learned in school to pass an exam. So, and the more I dive into it, the more beauty I find.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. I worked at an acupuncture college for a number of years, and I ended up quitting largely to do my own sort of school, and all these fun little projects have gone on the go. But not too long ago, I had a friend ask me, she said, when are you coming back to teach at the college? And without skipping a beat, I said, never. I can't do it. I can't go back. I can't do it. because in colleges we're required to teach to the exam. And I feel like once, and it's the same thing. I mean, I taught massage and yoga and all these things. It's like once when you're teaching, it kind of sucks because it takes the magic, it takes the poetry out of it because you have to pass all these technical things. But it is such a beautiful and poetic medicine. And I think that's probably my favorite part of it. It turns out I don't actually like putting needles in that much. Like, great, I could do it, but I love the poetry of it, like having conversations about five elements. I could just talk five elements for 2 hours with a client, not even put a needle in, and then we both come out feeling like, oh, we both feel like we just had a session, right? It's just so beautiful. Yeah, it's really really poetic. What sort of like poetry, what sort of like inner school of TCM are you currently looking into or fascinating, or what's resonating with you these days?
So, okay, I've been dabbling with Andrew, I forget his last name, but the botanical biohacking guy.
Okay.
If you're familiar with him. Anyway, he has an herbal, and I don't know if he ships up to Canada or not. Maybe it's just a US thing. But he started a like herbal tea company, a Chinese herbal tea. And so he actually takes the raw herbs and he puts them into tea bags, and then they're in this lovely bag. And I take the Xiao San personally, and it's delicious because we all know what herbs taste like, and I mean it's delicious in the way of herbs.
Okay. It's a TCM version of delicious, which means you're not going to retch. Okay, beautiful.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
kidding.
I'm like, I'm sure some of his formulas have all the bitter herbs in them, but the Xiao San, I love the way it tastes, and um, it's just they're great products. He really sources like high quality herbs, and to the point that I'm trying to get a few of his formulas right now, and they're on back order because the batches are being created. Like he has small batch and all this stuff, and I'm just learning so much about using a lot of these formulas we're familiar with in different ways. So he has a wind tea, so it helps release the exterior, like you have a wind attack. But he pairs Xiao Chai Hu Tang with San Ren Tang. And in school, I never learned Xiao Chai Hu Tang as like releasing the exterior, which it does kind of on a secondary level. But I always thought of it as that, like, half in, half out. So it's the pathogen going deeper into the body. It's stuck in the Xiaoyang channels. Well, I had a new patient the other day, and she's actually coming in suffering from just severe anxiety. And I start exploring with her. I'm like, you have a bunch of latent pathogens like just hidden in your body. And that's actually what I think is the source of all of this anxiety. So if we kind of clean that up, it'll start to resolve and we can move on to another phase. And I would normally go for his wind tea to start there. And I started questioning myself, like, oh, is this really the right formula for her? Is that, or should I just hit her with like an adaptogen to calm her down right now in the moment, whatever it is. And I was going back through my notes with her, the conversation we had, and she's in that pivot stage. Like she can't make a decision where she used to be very decisive. She kept fidgeting in the chair, just flipping side to side. She's literally like pivoting her body back and forth in my office. And as I was thinking about it, this is actually the perfect formula for her. This like Xiao Chai Hu Tang, that's something, she's got reactivated Epstein-Barr. And so that's stuck in there, but she's had it a long time, but it's come back out. And so it's half in, it's half out. And so that's the beauty that I've really just kind of been playing with, is really looking at the translations of these formulas of, what they do, and just the patterns that we see, and what are the words people are using. Another patient yesterday, she emailed me some symptoms and I feel stuck. And I'm like, great. Xiaoyao-san is great at like getting things unstuck. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is very poetic. Yeah, that's what I'm finding.
As I hear you describe that, what I find interesting and I'm curious about is how your study of hypnotherapy, and in particular, what's coming to me is your understanding of NLP shifts how you would prescribe. You know, in some because in NLP and hypnotherapy, we are taught to listen so closely to the precise words people choose, with the understanding that the unconscious is going to speak, particularly, call them a Freudian slip or whatever it might be. But when somebody says the word stuck, it's like there's a lot of juice behind that. So I'm curious in your experience, like, do you feel like the study of hypnotherapy and NLP has guided your methodology for choosing herbs, choosing points, diagnosing?
Yeah, absolutely. It has it has transformed my practice and the way that I communicate with my patients, because not all of my patients come to me for hypnopuncture. And so, many of my patients are standard kind of acupuncture TCM patients, and I still am able to use the tools, maybe not as much hypnotherapy because I'm not inducing hypnosis with them, but the NLP for sure. And I don't know how people practice hypnotherapy without NLP, because I know they do. And I took an entire like 2 year long course that I invested in to become a master like NLP trainer. Actually, I can technically like go train NLP if I wanted to. And um, it is so amazing just communicating with my patients or anybody, my husband. Like it helps, because when somebody is speaking to you in their language, if it doesn't resonate with my exact language, how I would maybe say something, just being able to speak that back to them in their language is going to just sit better, resonate better with them.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to pick out those language nuggets, like you said,
Yeah.
like that somebody is stuck, just that it really does drive my treatment, like how I'm going to work with that person, and at the very least how I'm going to communicate with them.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I teach my
Um.
patients NLP all the time. Like I teach them, not on necessarily like a high level, but I explain to them where but versus and. It's
Mhm.
like both things can be true at one time. You don't have to negate the first part of the sentence to make the other part of the sentence true. And then many of my patients, if I'm going to take them off of certain foods, make them avoid certain foods, then they'll come in and they'll be like, "Oh, I was at dinner last night and we went to pizza and I told them I can't have that." And I said, "No, you don't have that. Like, you don't eat pizza anymore. That's way more empowering. Like, I get to
Mhm.
choose now that I don't eat this, as opposed to somebody's telling me I'm not allowed to."
Yeah. Yeah. Those little minor shifts in language, in the short term, they might seem relatively benign. But I do believe that those small shift in affirmative phrases as opposed to restrictive phrases make
Yeah.
such a huge difference. And the word you used is perfect for it. It is empowerment. It gives one sovereignty. I think of the things we can give our clients, if this is something we could give them,
Mm-hmm.
if of the things we could give our client, giving them sovereignty is one of the best things we can do. The ability to know they get to choose
Mm-hmm.
so much of how they feel and how they think. And a lot of it does start with words. It starts with the language that we choose to use externally, but also, of course, there's the internal monologue and self-talk that
Yeah.
requires a lot of work to deal with. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm strongly of the opinion that either NLP or basic hypnosis, it should be required training for pretty much anybody in our sort of complementary alternative medicine world. I don't know enough about the other sort of Western allopathic system to say that it should be, but I certainly know that within what I practice,
Mm-hmm.
acupuncture, massage therapy, hypnotherapy, yoga, all these realms. It's like the best thing. I took my training when I was in second year of acupuncture school. So when people say, "What was the best part of acupuncture school?" I say my hypnotherapy training. It was just so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming back to using language starts with our thoughts, obviously, and then what comes out of our mouths. Um, and to do it from an empowering choice, basically, to have sovereignty. And I know probably all of your listeners are in some kind of body work, like they touch bodies on a regular
Yeah.
basis, which means they have some part of them that's very kinesthetic, like they can probably feel very well compared to maybe somebody who's not in this field. And so I would encourage anyone out there, if this is like new information for them, to switch the word but to and. I want to feel better, and I want to like not work. I'm trying to come
Mhm.
back to that disability scenario. Like
Right. Yes.
I want to feel better, and I want to also like keep not having to work or whatever it may be. Both are true. You don't have to say I want to feel better, but so I
Yeah.
would encourage your listeners, if this is new information, to try that out and see how it feels in their body, knowing that they're probably very kinesthetic and good at tapping into that feeling of, what does it feel like if you say the word but as a conjunction versus and, or even like I don't drink alcohol versus I can't drink alcohol. Like, how does that feel? One should feel expansive, one probably feels very contractive.
Mhm.
And just being able to share that, or even allow our patients to try to do that, to feel what it feels like, is you get to see that light bulb click on. Like, oh my God, that was a
Yeah.
simple, literally like maybe a couple of letters.
Mhm. It sounds as you're describing it like that. That's a great embodiment practice. Do you include a lot of embodiment within your practice when you're working with clients?
Honestly, not too much. I really do like to use an NLP technique that you're probably familiar like watching eye patterns for their
Mhm.
internal representation.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So where do their eyes go as they're talking or thinking? That will tell me if they're visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or if they're thinkers, auditory, digital. And I find, and this is probably because I'm very auditory digital, I'm very much in my head, self talk a lot. I attract a lot of auditory digitals into my world. And so I feel like they're the tougher ones to like teach about how their bodies feel.
Hmm.
um, and now maybe you're giving me a little bit of a challenge to, oh, this would be a fun challenge to teach my thinkers how to feel in their body. Um, so I may just start doing
Yeah.
that. But in general, no, I don't. When I have very kinesthetic patients, and I have a couple that come to mind, we do a lot of like, you know, what are you feeling now? Especially when I like put in acupuncture needles, many of them will be like, ooh, it spirals. And I'm like, it does. Like the chi does spiral in the body. Like that's very cool that you can feel that.
Hmm. As you were describing that, I was thinking about how choosing the right modality is like one of the most important things we could do for our clients. What I mean by this is with embodiment practices, it's been a huge part of my world for the last little while. Like my partner, she does a lot of embodiment practices, and it was all the rage in the world, the alternative medicine world for quite a long time, even the allopathic medicine world. So I got really deep into it, and I see a somatic practitioner like twice a month, and it just doesn't land for me. Like I do it and I see the value of it big time. But now after a couple years of being in it, I'm starting to realize it's like what's probably more helpful is to understand that while I can move into the embodied practice and I can do these things, it's not my native language. Whereas somebody else who is much more kinesthetic and much more in that embodied realm, it just clicks and it's like the perfect thing for them. So I think it's what you just said about tuning into your client and seeing this is a kinesthetic person, so talking to them in embodied language, versus this is a very heady person, so I might spend 6 months teaching them how to move from their head to their right shoulder, right? Versus maybe just choosing a different way to communicate would get much faster results. And that largely comes through the awareness that we do learn in things like hypnotherapy and NLP. No, no. Thank you. I appreciate that because it was a light bulb moment for me. Very insightful. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Happy to help.
Now, what do you do, right? So, what do you do for yourself? This is something I'm always curious about when I talk to practitioners, because so many of us, we get busy. Quote, we're all busy, right? We're helping people do other things. I myself have fallen into the trap of I give so much home care that I believe I'm doing the home care. It's like, I know about all these things, so I'm good. I don't need to do anything, right? But I'm curious for yourself, what do you do to take care? You're a busy person, right? So how do you balance it all and still maintain your own well-being?
I'm not always the best.
Honesty, I love it.
Yeah. um, I would say it's probably been about a year now where I've been doing much better at taking care of my well-being and investing in my health in the way that I ask my patients to invest with me in their health. Um, I've always had a huge passion for nutrition. I think that's why functional medicine was maybe not only so kind of attractive to me, but fun and even um, somewhat simple to some degree, it being such like a complex system. I still find it simple in some ways. Um, and so I've always just loved learning about nutrition and practice, like testing stuff out on myself before I would ever recommend it to someone else. So I've always eaten pretty clean and pretty healthy. Even gosh, I would say like late teens, early 20s. I even went vegetarian for a while because I just didn't want the negative energy of the industrial meat system coming into my
Mm-hmm.
body. And this was long before I ever found acupuncture. So I was still like playing with energy in that way. I love fitness. I was a fitness instructor for years between like spin or kettlebell or TRX, like all sorts of different types of fitness styles. So I love to work out a few days. I mean, I love to grumble about working out when I'm there. I may not love it, but I love the effects. And
I get
I'm
it.
in my 40s now, and so just it's a bit more in the forefront to like, oh, I wish I would have been taking care of my body 20 years ago, but better late than never. Um, and I'm bad at getting acupuncture on a regular basis. I do not love treating myself. So,
Mm-hmm.
if I have an acute issue, I will treat myself. But for maintenance, I probably get into acupuncture a few times a year. It could be better. I do, though, what I am good at is I get chiropractic adjustments 3 times a month and at least one massage a month. So I
Nice.
am taking care of myself to some degree, but
Mm-hmm.
that's about as much as I can muster. And then the periodic, kind of as needed meditation and like hypnotherapy meditations. Like I really do, if I find a great hypnotherapy recording or something out there that feels right to me, then I'll kind of dive into that for a while and just get my mind right and my nervous system back
Mm-hmm.
in order.
Right. Right. I'm not sure about how you experience it, but for myself, after I finished a good hypnotherapy session, I come out feeling like that session was all about me. Like, of course, I'm not doing the session making it about me, but a really good one, I come out feeling like that was like an hour and a half of the most profound meditation. I love it. I love it. That's one of the things I enjoy most about it. It feels like I'm also taking care of myself, and I get it. I get it. I mean, I'm a TCM practitioner, so I've got a million excuses as to why I cannot exercise for 3 months of the year. It's winter. The winter energy is about slowing down and going inside and drinking hot chocolate all day, right? So I definitely get that. Now you said you've been doing this for about 9 years, right? You've been practicing in this home medicine world for about 9 years, and it sounds like you've dabbled in quite a few different areas. And from listening to your podcast and reading some of the things that you do, you really seem to be in it, like you're in this world. So I'm curious if we could kind of like move forward in time and you can wave your magic wand, what would you like to see happen with our industry, either specifically of traditional Chinese medicine or more globally as complementary medicine or medicine in general? But what's kind of like this dream you might have of where our industry could go?
Okay, well, I'm a dreamer.
Beautiful.
And I'm going to hold back because there was something I was going to say and I was like, I maybe don't want this like out in the ethers forever and just, have people come attack me in my sleep.
Oh, yeah, don't want that.
There's a very large chemical company that sprays toxic chemicals on our plants that I have had for decades. I have had the dream that I will be one of the people to help take them down.
Nice.
So that's a big dream of mine. That's where I'm kind of framing this fact that I'm a big dreamer. I would really love in my lifetime, I would love to see the Western world and probably most of the world at this point move from a reactive medicine model to a proactive medicine model where our TCM medicine, and I think maybe it could be argued the most beautiful thing about it is that it is preventative and it is designed to prevent disease. And, the ancient like barefoot doctors of the mountain, they got paid when their patients would come see them on a regular basis and they were well. And if the patient got sick, they didn't pay the doctor to get them better because it was the doctor's fault for allowing them to get sick, basically. I love that concept. And so I would really love to see Western medicine do what it's great at as an emergency type medicine. I mean, we can boil renshen, ginseng, for 45 minutes to stop a heart attack, but during the 45 minutes, somebody's going to die. So I would, I love that we have emergency medicine and you can go to the hospital and, many times survive a heart attack or a broken bone. I don't want to set the broken bone and try to help you with that. So I would really, really love in our lifetime to see all of these modalities work in harmony at the things that they do best. Yeah. So people who are who are practicing the complementary medicine like we are, where it is very preventative. Like I get my chiropractic treatments every month because that keeps my nervous system in check. And I would love for that to be the main model and then have our emergency medicine available and the pharmaceuticals that are really helpful, have those available to people when needed. But, just blanket throwing all these drugs at people and having doctors, MDs can hardly keep up with all the new drugs that are coming out, that they don't get to practice real medicine anymore, in my opinion. So that's my really big vision, is to see just people being well, especially here in the States. We have like rampant obesity because our food isn't real food. I call it food like products. And, to see people eating real food again, to see them, losing weight in a healthy way and getting stronger and tapping into some of these like prevention models rather than just going and having to take diabetes meds and heart meds and stuff because they didn't take care of their bodies. That's what I would love to see that.
Beautifully said. I really, really appreciate that. And it sounds balanced, and I completely agree. I'm grateful that you brought up the idea that acupuncture is designed as a preventative medicine. And I think that's super unfortunate because my experience has been, and I used to joke that I should have a plaque over my door that says, "You're my last hope," is people come to an acupuncturist after they've tried everything else. And they're like, I guess I'll try acupuncture. Whereas it's like the exact opposite order. Start with the thing we do really, really good, preventative medicine. And then you won't have to get that plaque. No, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And there's this question that I ask virtually everybody who comes on the podcast. And it's this deep curiosity I have. And you can answer it in one sentence or as long as you want. And it's, in your experience as a practitioner, but also as somebody who gets regular treatment, who's been in this system for quite a while, in your opinion, what really makes a successful practitioner?
Hmm. I'm going to tell a story to answer that question. And it's funny because I said I'm like so not good at Ericksonian stuff, but honestly, all he did was like tell weird stories that seemed like they didn't fit, and then they do.
Yeah.
When lockdown happened during COVID in 2020, I was right about practice for 5 years. And I don't know how it was for you going to school, and you taught at the school. So I hope you didn't teach this, training glitch to your students. But I just heard all throughout school, it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to be successful. It's going to take you 3 to 5 years to be successful. It's going to take you 3 to 5 years to be successful. And so I really, as you understand how the subconscious mind works, all of that repetition into the subconscious mind drilled it into me that it had to take me 3 to 5 years to be successful. And for some reason, I chose the latter end of that, the 5 years. And so I allowed myself all of that time to struggle at like really making this into a business. And I think what happened for me was people were walking into my clinic, and as much as I care for and love my patients and want to help them, they were still all dollar signs to me. And every person who walked in looked like a dollar sign. Like, was this going to make my rent this month or not? Am I going to be able to pay myself ever and make a living from this? Lockdown happened in California in March of 2020, and I was like 2 months shy of my 5-year mark. And I was really, really afraid for my business. I remember crying in front of my mother-in-law saying that, I don't know if this is going to survive. I don't know if my business will survive this. Like, we all don't know what's going on. Fortunately, in California, as acupuncturists, we were not required to shut down. And I chose not to. But what I did is, we were just days into this thing. Nobody knew nothing. We still thought it was like on our clothes. That's when people were wiping off cereal boxes from the grocery store. Like, we knew nothing and of how it was transmitted. And so I would wake up every morning and probably have only 1 or 2 people on my schedule anyway, because people were staying home. But I would wake up every morning and ask myself, am I doing right by my patients, by my community, if I go in and treat these patients today? And I had made a commitment that if I woke up and asked that question and the answer was no, that I'm not doing right by my patients, I'm not doing right for them, if it was going to be unsafe in any way, then I would cancel. I wouldn't go see my patients. And the answer was never no. Like, every morning I woke up and asked that question, the answer was like, yes, these people need me, maybe now more than ever. And it was a tough 6 weeks once lockdown started, and it took till about the 1st of May. But after that, like once people realized, between my patients, but also prospective patients, knew that I was open, I was available, I was there to help them, and my clinic was a safe space. Like it wasn't crowded with a bunch of sick, coughing people. I obviously had a ton of measures in place to make sure, there wasn't a bunch of cross traffic or anything like that, wiping everything down. But once people kind of learned that, they just flooded my doors. So like my real practice of running an actual business was started in May of 2020, really.
Wow.
And I am wholeheartedly convinced that the reason I have been so successful since then is because I flipped my mindset to be, I am here to be of service, fully of service, regardless of the financial part attached to that, versus seeing people walk into my clinic with dollar signs on their heads that, oh, you're going to help feed me today, basically. And so to me, the biggest thing for success is mindset. And part of that is knowing what it is you want and what does success look like for you. It might be different. I'm guarantee it's different from what it means to me. And I have a good friend. We went to school together, and she practices not far from me. She's probably a 15-minute drive from me. And she charges less than half of what I charge for a treatment. And she's still incredibly successful. She sees tons of patients all the time. Her patients love her, and they would probably pay what they pay me, but it's her definition of success. That's what she wants out of it. She wants to be more available financially to people, whereas I'm like, I want to be the highest paid person in my area because I want to weed out the people who aren't serious about working with me. And if I'm charging a pretty high fee for what I do, I better get it right. Like I better do my absolute best and show up in that space to really find the solution that this patient needs.
No, I like that. I like that at all a lot. It sounds like number one is identify your definition of success would be kind of like the starting point. And then the second thing from there, from my understanding of what you're saying, is the mindset. The mindset matters. Why are you doing what you're doing? And I would say that I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that helping people because they've got dollar signs over their head, they've got a numeric value that equates to money in your bank. Probably not the best mindset. Probably not. It definitely brings a different energy into the room versus how can I serve you today? What comes up with that mentality? Thank you very much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. So as our time together comes to an end here, I'm curious, how can people get a hold of you, follow you? You do have a podcast, you've got a website, you've got all the socials. So I'll put all of it in the show notes, but is there anything in specific you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I would like to mention, especially if you're an acupuncturist out there, I only teach to acupuncturists at this time. But I teach my hypnopuncture method to other acupuncturists. So I would recommend, if you're a listener and you're an acupuncturist and you were curious about the style that Jess and I practice, and I know of a few other like hypnopuncturists out there in the world, and I've been so curious to actually chat with somebody and learn like, ooh, how do you do it versus how do I do it? It's just so fun. But if any listeners out there are acupuncturists and they're just curious to learn more, I do teach my specific method to acupuncturists. And so the way to find me with that is it's Hypnopuncture. So it's hypno and then puncture method.com. And I'm primarily on Instagram. If anybody wants to connect there, it's at Dr. Sharleen, and that's all spelled out. And I'm sure Jess will have to put my name spelled correctly in the show notes.
I will do that. I'll put all the links down there so people can be sure to find you. Well, once again, thank you very much for this conversation. We covered a lot of ground, and just like you, it was very enjoyable for me to discuss this idea of combining these two beautiful modalities. So thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed our chat.